Hello guys, welcome to Study for Civil Services. In this video we will see NCERT Class 8 Geography Chapter 4, that is Agriculture. And we have already covered all the chapters of Class 6 and Class 7, and we will cover NCERT from Class 6 to Class 12 for History, Economy, Polity and Geography. So let's start this. This is a chapter which tells about some of the condition of agriculture, some of the factors and the activities like primary, secondary, and tertiary activities in India. So, if you see that the whole transformation from a plant to a finished product, this involves, or any other product, it involves three type of economic activities. So, there are three type of economic activities in India. These are primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary means all those activities which are connected with extraction and production of natural resources. For example, agriculture is the primary activities. Agriculture means soil cultivation. It consists of two words. Agri means soil and culture means cultivation. So all those activities which are connected with extraction and production of natural resources, they are known as agriculture. They are known as primary activities. And examples of primary activities in India are agriculture, fishing, gathering. So anything which you directly extract from the nature is known as primary activity. Then secondary activity are those activity which process the products from the primary activities. So secondary activities are concerned with the processing of the resources obtained from the primary activities. For example, manufacturing of steel or any other thing, then baking of bread and weaving of cloth, all these are known as secondary activities. And tertiary activity, they actually provide support to both primary as well as secondary activities. So services are known as tertiary activities. Services like transporting, trading, banking, then insurance and advertising, these all are the examples of tertiary activities. So there are three economic activities. First is primary, that is associated with the extraction of natural resources. Then secondary, that is associated with the processing of the products obtained from the primary activities, that is manufacturing. Then tertiary activity, which actually support and which actually provide support to both primary as well as secondary. And these are actually services like transport services, trade, banking, insurance, and advertising. Now in India, agriculture is a primary activity because of a lot of rivers present in India and a lot of fertile land. And in agriculture includes growing of crops, fruits, vegetables, flowers, and rearing of livestock. So all this comes under agriculture. And if you see the data wise in world, around 50% of the persons are engaged in agricultural activity, and about and more than 50% of the India's population is also still dependent on the agriculture. So agriculture is still the largest employment provider to Indian masses, although its contribution to GDP is very less. Now there are some of the very important factors for the agricultural activity, like favorable topography of soil and climate. These are the two vital factors for agriculture, and the land on which crops are grown is known as arable land. And for sustaining agriculture, there should be certain factors and which actually helped the growing of the crops. And this is the world map showing the arable land worldwide. So you can see that most of the part of India, means a major chunk of India's land is arable land actually. And this is world distribution of arable land. So in the North America continent also, the means it has a large part of arable land, and that is why North America, that is the part of USA, the eastern part of USA is known as the wheat ball of the world. and there are a large amount of arable land is present in Europe also, and in East Asia and Southeast Asia also. So, and these are some of the terms related with the agriculture, then fooding, cropping, and all those. See, there are five terms like agriculture means soil cultivation. It is the science and art of cultivation on the soil, the raising of the crops and rearing livestock. All this comes under the agriculture. It is also known as farming in India. Then sericulture means the commercial rearing of silkworms, and it is an alternative in case the crop fails, and it actually supplement the income of the farmer. Then pisciculture, it is breeding of fish in specially constructed tanks and ponds. It is also another alternative source of farmers and poor people. And then viticulture is known as viticulture means cultivation of grapes, and horticulture is a combined term used for growing vegetables, flowers, and fruits for commercial use. So please remember these five terms. Direct definition based question can be asked from these five terms. So agriculture means soil cultivation. It includes raising crops and rearing livestock. Sericulture means silkworms. So sericulture means silkworm, commercial rearing of silkworms. Means silk farming. Pisciculture means breeding of fish. And viticulture means cultivation of grapes. Horticulture is a combined term for all the growing of vegetable, flowers, and fruits. So there are some of the factors like in there are the inputs in the agriculture, then there are the some of the processes involved in the agriculture, and then we get the output. So this all this comes under the farm system. So if you see this diagram, this is a system like we give some input like machinery, seeds, and chemicals, and then some processes will be followed like plugging, sowing, and spraying, and then we get some agriculture, some output like crops, cereals, cotton, jute crops, and all the other crops. And this is known as a farm system of an arable farm. Okay. Now, if you see the inputs, there are two type of inputs. First is physical inputs like sunshine, rainfall, temperature, then soil, then slope. All these are known as physical inputs. And then we also give some of the human inputs, like we should be having storage for the crops grown from the land. Then we need to provide human labor for various type of processes involved in the agriculture, like you can see in the figure 4.2, the one man is actually spraying some of the fertilizers or seeds and other chemicals and pesticides and insecticides. So these are some of the human inputs like storage, then labor, then we can also provide machinery to the agriculture for the advancement and for increasing the production. And obviously there are some chemicals involved like insecticide and pesticides and fertilizers. And we have already seen that some of the operations involved in the agriculture are plugging, plowing, sowing, irrigation, weeding, and harvesting. And the outputs are obviously the crops, the wool, the dairy, and the poultry products. Now, if you see, there are various type of farming systems present across the world, and it actually depends upon the geographical conditions, the demand of produce, the labor, and the level of technology. So all these factors actually define which type of farming is present in the particular area. So majorly or broadly, the farming is divided into two types. First is subsistence and second is commercial. Subsistence means it only meets the needs of a farmer family. And in this type of subsistent farming, only the very low level of technology and only the household labor means all the members of the family are actually involved in producing very small output. And the subsistence farming can also further classify it into two types. First is intensive, subsistence, which is present in the East Asia and Southeast Asia, and second is the primitive subsistence farming. And if you see the intensive subsistence agriculture, actually the farmer and all the members of the family, they cultivate a very small plot of land, and they use very simple tools and handmade and man-made tools and with labor. And it actually depends on the climate with large number of days with sunshine and fertile soils. They permit growing of more than one crop annually on the same plot. So they use the same plot, and they use it intensive means in many times. They try to use it many times, and they actually use each and every inch of that plot. And rice is actually the main crop, and other crops also include in this intensive subsistent agriculture like wheat, maize, pulses, and oilseeds. And this type of intensive subsistent agriculture is prevalent in the very populated regions of China, India, and other means all the those regions where the monsoon is very prevalent and where the climate is monsoon type like South Asia, Southeast Asia, and East Asia. And these days, one term is is getting very popular because Sikkim has become the first state which adopted 100% organic farming. Organic farming means no use of any chemicals, pesticide, or insecticides. And in this organic farming, actually, all the natural way of farming is used. Organic manure and then gobar and other things like cow dung and cow urine are used as natural pesticides. And here, no type of genetic modification is involved to increase the yield of the crop. So organic farming means all the things are natural, no chemicals, and the use of cow dung, cow urine, and other compost and other vermicompost and the very natural ways of these insecticide and these natural pesticides. So we were talking about the subsistent agriculture, and the first one was the intensive subsistence, and the second one is the primitive subsistent agriculture. And primitive means the shifting type of cultivation and the nomadic herding. So primitive subsistence agriculture includes both subsisting cultivation as well as nomadic herding. Shifting cultivation is actually means you crop a you just select a piece of the land, and then cut all the trees on it, then burn it, and then whatever ashes which obtained from the burning of the trees, you just keep the ashes there in the land for some days, and that will be used as actually the fertilizers. And like all the fertilizers include three components: NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, and the ashes actually contain the phosphorus. So these ashes are then mixed with the soil and crop, and it helps in the cultivation of crops like maize, yam, potatoes, and cassava. And after you use the same land for 2 3 times, and soil starts losing its fertility, then the land is abandoned, and then the cultivator moves to new plot. And meanwhile means it keep on moving new places, and when it again comes to the place where earlier it actually cultivated that land at that so it also get a period of recharge, and in the that time all the trees were all grown on the old area. So that is why this is known as shifting cultivation. It is also known as slash and burn agriculture, and it is known by different names in different parts of the world. Like in northeast part of India, it is known as chuming. Then in Mexico, it is known as milpa. Then in Brazil, it is known as roca, and then in Malaysia, it is known as ladang. And nomadic herding is actually practiced in semi-arid and arid regions of Sahara, Means it is this is nomadic herding means it is the practice used in very less rainfall area and very arid regions and desert regions, dry deserts of worlds like the biggest desert of the world like Sahara, then Central Asia's desert in some parts of India also like Rajasthan and Jammu Kashmir. And this in this type of farming actually herdsmen they move from place to place with their animals and for the search of new type of pasture or fodder and water along the defined routes, and this type of movement actually arisen in the response of the climatic constraint and terrain. And the animals like sheep, camel, yak, and goats, they are most commonly reared, and they provide milk, meat, wool, hides, and other products to the herders and their family. You might have heard in the regions of Gujarat and Rajasthan, the actually the people rear various type of animals and then they move to some of the mountainous regions of Himachal Pradesh and other regions of Jammu and Kashmir for the search of the pasture for their animals. And this is a way of farming actually. And the second broad type is commercial farming. Here the crops are grown and animals are reared for the sale in the market. The basic purpose is only the profit here. And the area is cultivated and area is very big and amount of capital used is very large. In subsistence type, the area cultivated is very small and the fragment land is actually fragmented into very small areas. But in commercial farming the area is big, area is cultivated and they put a lot of capital in it and most of the work is done by machines. And commercial farming actually includes commercial grain farming, then mixed farming and plantation agriculture. So three types of commercial farming are there. First is commercial grain farming. In this, the grains and cereals are farmed, and then mixed farming means the agriculture with the rearing of the livestock, and then plantation means a single type of species like tea and coffee and sugarcane is cropped. If you see the commercial grain farming, crops are grown for only commercial purpose. Only purpose is profit building, and some of the major, and some of the commonly cultivated groans grains are wheat and maize. And the major area involved where commercial grain farming is practiced are the parts of the temperate grasslands of the North America, Europe, and Asia, because these areas are sparsely populated with large farms spreading over hundreds of hectares, and severe winters actually they restrict the growing season and only a single type of crop can be grown here. In the mixed farming, the land is used for growing food and fodder crops and also for rearing livestock. So mixed farming is a term means the crop cultivation plus livestock rearing. Both the activities are done in the same land by the same men. That is why they are known as mixed farming. And they are practiced in the Europe and East USA, then Argentina, Southeast Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And I've told you that there is a third type of commercial farming, and it is known as plantation. It is actually a type of commercial farming, and in this type of commercial farming, a single crop of either tea or coffee or sugarcane or cashew nut or rubber or banana or cotton are grown. And in this type of farming, also a large amount of capital and labor are required, and produce may be processed on the farm itself, and they actually get support from the factories, and all the development of transport network is also necessary for this type of farming. And all the factories involved in the plantation agriculture they actually provide infrastructure and capital for the development of the plantations. And major plantations are found in the tropical regions of the world, like rubber is found in the Malaysia, then coffee in the Brazil, tea in the India and Sri Lanka. Although Kenya is emerging as a big player of for the tea export. Now we'll see some of the major crops and their details and their temperature and climate conditions required. See, a large variety of crops are grown to meet the requirement of the growing population, and these crops are very useful to supply as raw material for agro-based industry. And if you see, there are some of the major food crops like wheat, rice, maize, and millets. Then the important fiber crops are known as then jute and cotton are known as important fiber crops, and then important beverage crops are tea and coffee. Now we'll see some of the major food crops. Like the most important food crop is rice. Rice is actually the major food crop of whole of the world, and it is a staple diet of tropical and subtropical regions, and it needs some of the conditions like it needs high temperature, then high humidity and rainfall. And in India, the major areas where the rice are produced are the northwest part. Although it northwest part of the India is not not having the major monsoon or the major rainfall in the northwest part, but because of the developed irrigation system in the northwest part of the Punjab, Haryana, and western UP, these areas are the major producers of the rice. And also because of the government focus, and the term you might be heard of is the green revolution. Green revolution is actually for the rice and wheat, and in the regions of only the northwest part of India. And that is why these are some of the negative effects of green revolution also, because it actually increased the disparity between the rich and poor regions of the India. So we were discussing some of the conditions required for the rice. See, it needs high temperature, high humidity and rainfall, and it grows best in alluvial clay soil, and it can retain water also. Now China leads in the production of the rice. So largest producer of the rice is actually China, and then India is the second largest. But recently a news had come that India becomes the largest exporter of the rice in the world. So export wise, India is the first, and production wise, China is the first. And in favorable climatic conditions, it can be grown that is in the area of West Bengal and Bangladesh. Two to three crops of rice can be grown in a year. Now, if you see, and rice is one more thing is that rice is a kharif crop, and it actually it is harvested in the month of June, and means it is cultivated between the June and September. Then the second most important crop is wheat, and it requires moderate temperature and rainfall during growing season, and also the some of the bright sunshine at the time of the harvest. And it thrives best in the well-drained, loamy soil, and it is grown extensively in USA, Canada, Argentina, Russia, Ukraine, and Australia and India. And in India, wheat is actually grown in the winter, and the most important regions of the wheat, you know, in India are the eastern part of the India, like the West Bengal. West Bengal actually produces the largest amount of wheat in India, and eastern part is actually the largest. Eastern part of India is the major producer of the wheat in India. Then if you see the third most important crop is food crop is millets, and they are also known as coarse grains. You might have heard this term coarse grain in the National Food Security Act, because there were three type of grains, that is the rice, then wheat, and then this coarse grains. This can be grown on less fertile and sandy soils, and it is a very hardy crop, and it needs very low rainfall and high to moderate temperature and adequate rainfall. There are three type of millets in India, that is jowar, bajra and ragi, and other important producers of millets are Nigeria, China and Niger. Another important food crop is maize. Maize actually required moderate temperature and then rainfall and lots of sunshine. And it needs well-drained fertile soils, and it is grown in North America, Brazil, China, Russia, Canada, and India and Mexico. Then the important fiber crops of India is are the cotton and jute. Cotton is actually cultivated in the Deccan plateau of the India because it needs, you know, it needs the soil. It needs actually the high temperature, then light rainfall and 210 frost per days, and it grows best on the black soil. Black and alluvial soil, and black soil is actually present in the Deccan Plateau part of the India. In Deccan Plateau covers the areas of the Maharashtra, Gujarat, MP, and all the areas surrounding areas in the Deccan Plateau of the India. And there are see the China, USA, India, and Pakistan, Brazil, and Egypt are leading producers of cotton, and cotton is one of the main raw material for the cotton textile industry. And then the another fiber crop of India is jute. Jute is also known as golden fiber, and it grows well on alluvial soil, and it requires high temperature, high heavy rainfall, and humid climate. So that is why jute is grown in the tropical areas, and the India and Bangladesh are the leading producers of jute. The important fact is to remember is that India has become the largest producer of jute, and in India, most of the jute producing areas are in West Bengal and in the eastern part of the India. Now, there are two type of beverage crops in India. That is coffee and tea. Coffee actually requires a warm and wet climate and well-drained gloomy soil. And hill slopes are more suitable for growth of this crop. And Brazil is the largest producer of coffee, followed by Colombia and India. See, in the coffee growing areas of India are present in the Karnataka. So Karnataka is the largest, coffee producer of India. Then tea is also an beverage crop, and it grows on plantations. And tea require cool climate and well distributed high rainfall, but it don't require the stagnation of the water. It requires the water to be flown across the surface where the tea is grown, but it don't require the stagnation of the water. And that is why the tea is actually grown on the hill areas, and it needs well drained loamy soil and gentle slopes. And also it also requires large amount of labor and to pick the leaves actually. And some of the best quality tea producers in the world are Kenya, India, China, Sri Lanka. Now this is a fact that maize is actually known as corn. You might have eat this in whenever you visit any mall or any shopping mall or any other thing. So it is the corn is actually it is maize, and various colorful varieties of maize are present across the world. Now we can see some things about the agriculture development in India. It actually means the efforts made to increase farm production in order to meet the growing demand in of the increasing population, and this can be achieved in many ways, like you know the the agriculture production. To increase the agricultural production, you can increase the crop area, you can increase the number of crops grown, then you can also improve irrigation facilities. And this is the most important factor for the cultivation of crop, because although the northeastern part of India, they don't have much rainfall, the monsoon winds don't produce so much rainfall in the north part of the India, but still They are the, some of the largest producer of the rice because of the, advanced irrigation facilities present in the in the Punjab, Haryana, and Western UP part. And then other factors to increase the agri production is use of fertilizers and high yield variety of the seeds. And then most important other factor is the mechanization of the agriculture. But because all these factors, they actually, the ultimate aim is to develop agriculture and to increase the food security. Food security is a very broad term. It actually exists when all the peoples from rich to poor, at all the times have access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and as well as the food preference for an active and healthy life. So this is the broad definition of food security, and that is why, and because of the overpopulation and the increasing population, food security these days is a very large problem, and that is why government of India has introduced various acts to give food security to all its citizens. And the most important act was the National Food Security Act, and it actually focused on some of the poor people and the lower strata of the society. And if you see, the agriculture had developed at different places in different parts of the world. And developing countries actually, they have large population and they usually practice intensive agriculture. I've told you already. And here in the developing countries like India, the crops are actually grown on the small holdings, and they are mostly only for the subsistence. And but the larger holdings are more suitable for commercial agriculture, and they are prevalent in the USA, Canada, and Australia. There are actually these in this chapter. There are two case studies are given uh, to compare the farming of developing country and the farming in the developed country. So if you see the problems, there are various problems in the agriculture in the India and other developing countries. The first and most important problem is the land fragmentation. Because of the land fragmentation between generations and because of the cultural system and the other division of the family and getting into the nuclear families, the land is becoming fragmented, and that is why everybody have a very small holding of the land, and that is why they multiplicity of the efforts is done in various lands, and that is why the production suffers. And also some of the government policies, they are not favoring in the developing countries, and the advancement in the agriculture is also not very much because they had to take tractor on rent, and then other methods, other traditional methods they use like bullocks for plugging. And the other problem is the availability of irrigation facilities, then availability of funds, and all these problems are there. And then also because of the subsidy given by the government in for the diesel and fertilizers, some of the farmers, they actually overuse these chemical fertilizers, and that is why some some problems like soil pollution and the the fertility of soil is decreasing day by day, and water levels and the groundwater levels are actually depleting also, and because of the various faulty agricultural processes. But if you compare these problems with the developed country, they actually take their agriculture as a business, and they average size of a farm in developed countries is much larger than that of the farm size of a developing countries. And they, in the developed countries, the farmer actually resides in the farm and they produce some of the major crops, and they their farming is very advanced. They hold a large amount of large area of land. They then they test their soil samples in laboratory, and then they monitor their farm through the satellites, and also they took various other they use various type of machines and mechanization in the agriculture, and that is why their production is very much, and that is why USA is known as the wheat ball of the world. So this is the actually completion of this chapter, and now we can see the exercise. Agriculture means the soil cultivation, and the factors influencing agriculture are various factors like topography of the soil and climate. Shifting cultivation, I have already told you, and its disadvantage are that the deforestation takes place when shifting cultivation actually involves the cutting of the trees. So that is why deforestation is take place, and then burning may produce pollution also. Then the cutting of the trees will affect the natural, you know, the natural vegetation and the wildlife present there. So these may be the disadvantages. Then plantation agriculture means the agriculture or the cultivation of one type of crop like tea or cotton or sugarcane or rubber. Then the fiber crops are cotton and jute, and the climatic conditions required for their growth. Like see, jute is grown in the area of high rainfall, high humidity, high temperature. Like in India, the most important areas related to the jute cultivation are the West Bengal and the eastern part of the India. And then other fiber crop is cotton, and cotton actually need 210 frost free days and the water, you know, and it is grown best in the black soil which is present in the Deccan Plateau, and it requires moderate temperature also. Now we'll see the objectivation. Horticulture means the growing of fruits and vegetables. Golden fibers means jute. Then leading producer of coffee is Brazil. Then the give the reasons why India agriculture is a primary activity, because in India most of the land is arable land and agriculture can be done, and also a large amount of rivers, and also a large amount of area is having the alluvial soil, and that soil is very fertile. So, and in agriculture also, is does not require much capital and input, and that is why almost 50% of the population of India is actually dependent on the agriculture, and agriculture is a primary activity because it includes the extraction of you know the natural resources. Then different crops are grown in different regions because they different crop needs different type of temperature and climate conditions. Now distinguish between the following. Primary activity means the extraction of the natural resources, the activities related to the extraction of the natural resources like agriculture, fishing. Then tertiary activities actually supports primary and secondary activities, and tertiary activities means the service in form of the transportation, trade, banking, insurance. The subsistence farming means the farmer and his family are doing these type of farming subsistence, and these farming actually produces only the output required to sustain and to give the livelihood to the farmer and their family, and they don't have the surplus production. And intensive farming means you use the land and take two or three crops a year. You try to take maximum output from the small land again and again. So this is known as sub intensive farming. So this is completion of this chapter 4 of class 8 of NCERT geography. In the next video we will cover chapter 5th of the class 8 NCERT geography. Thank you for listening.